Welcome to Dialogue This Week. In this corner, we invite guests from in and out of Korea to talk about a wide variety of issues ranging from culture and sports to the latest societal trends around the world. Now, International Children's Day was first proclaimed in Geneva during the World Conference on Child back in 1926. And this annual commemorative day celebrated in the honor of children is observed on May 5th here in South Korea. And since the 1970s, the day has been marked as an official public holiday, reaching its 100th anniversary this year. Now, today we look to get some perspective on how children's rights are being addressed not only here in South Korea, but also in other parts of the world, particularly war-struck Ukraine, where more than 7.5 million children need emergency aid, as well as other amenities and basic needs in this time of conflict. To discuss this issue, we're joined by James Elder, Unicef Global Spokesperson in Ukraine, and Bang Myung-hee, Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children Korea. Very warm welcome to you both. Thank you so much for joining us. Mr. Elder, particularly joining us all the way from Ukraine, thank you for making time for us under such dire circumstances. And, well, to begin with, a question for you, really. Now, we want to first address what this international pact adopted in 1989 was all about. It was adopted to ensure every right for every child, called the United Nations Convention on the Rights of the Child. So what were the basic rights that world leaders back then agreed to protect?
Look, that convention from 1989, the Convention of the Rights of the Child, is the most important convention I think we've ever seen. It's certainly the most ratified by countries around the globe in every corner, and it speaks to a commitment to children. It speaks to a commitment to protect their health, to protect their safety, to ensure that they have education, to protect their right to play. Across the board, it protects their right to be children, to grow up safely, to be vaccinated, to be healthy, to be given every opportunity. And in a lot of ways it sounds so obvious to your viewers, but of course it hasn't always been this way. So these past 10 decades have been incredibly important in protecting the rights of children, in protecting their safety. Now, we're not seeing that right now in Ukraine, but we can come to that later. But these have been incredible advancements in the protection of children, in their defense of their health, of their education, of their ability to be the next adults, of their ability to be the next citizens. They are, of course, our greatest resource. This Convention of the Rights of the Child attempts to ensure that these next citizens are given every opportunity to grow and to contribute to their societies.
Now, Ms. Park, this year actually marks the 100th anniversary of South Korea celebrating Children's Day. And of course, we often overlook Children's Day as a single day to make time for children, to give them gifts. And, well, the idea behind this day being a national holiday is to enable their guardians to spend time with their children. But, well, where does South Korea first stand in terms of progress in children's rights being protected?
So, as we all know, Korea has made significant progress in matters of rights to live and rights to develop. However, the quality of life of children still has a lot to be improved. According to the recent survey result of Save the Children and Seoul National University, which is a comparative study to show the level of happiness of 10-year-olds, Korea ranked only 31st out of 35 countries. We had key findings that Korean children reported quite low self-satisfaction, low satisfaction with learning, not enough safe environment, and lack of sense of control to their time use. It turned out that competitive educational environment was a key factor that hindered most children to recognize themselves positive and prevent them to use their time in a more proactive way. This study showed clearly what aspects that determine life satisfaction of children. And I believe that it is time for us to voice for the rights of children more than just fulfilling material conditions. Also, according to the annual survey conducted by the National Center for the Rights of the Child, the rate of response of whether their rights being respected has been decreased. For example, there is a phenomenon in Korea, no-kid zone, which is banning children to enter the restaurants or cafes. Moreover, there are some discriminatory languages such as 주린이, 유린이, and 초딩, which are commonly used daily basis to describe little children or somebody who is not skilled enough to make fun of them, which shows how our society is treating children as being immature, and not being good enough at anything. It is necessary to reconsider the purpose of proclaiming Children's Day 100 years ago and whether we treat children with dignity.
And now, Mr. Elder, now we want to really address this ongoing war in Ukraine and how it's been displacing people, but the most vulnerable people are often children, of course, and now some 7.5 million children in Ukraine, they've been impacted by the war. And first, can you outline for us what the biggest dangers are for children right now in such times of war?
The biggest dangers for children in Ukraine still are about survival. Hundreds of children have been killed in this war. And that's because these days it seems that children are on the front lines, that there's heavy weaponry consistently used in civilian areas. We see attacks on schools, on health clinics, on places that children should be safe, playgrounds at home, and they're not. So first and foremost, still we see children killed. Then, of course, Unicef is so concerned because there's such an enormous number of children affected. We're talking almost 2 in 3 children in Ukraine have been displaced, 2 in 3, mostly under bombardment, have had to flee their homes, the safety of what was their family home, usually farewelling their father, going somewhere else, the stress, the strain, the danger. That's an enormous threat to children, and it continues day in, day out for boys and girls across Ukraine.
And Ms. Park, now, how does a humanitarian aid organisation like Save the Children reach out in such circumstances of war? I mean, what children's emergency aid programmes do you have to help the children in Ukraine right now?
Since 2014, Save the Children have responded to the conflict emergency by delivering essential humanitarian aid to children and their families in Ukraine. In response to the ongoing crisis in Ukraine, we have launched our response in Ukraine and in neighboring countries, including Poland and Romania, right after the beginning of the onset of the war. We are providing life-saving assistance such as food, water, fast transfers, and safe places for children as people flee the conflict. We are responding through our partners where they can in Ukraine and will continue for as long as it is safe and possible to do so.
And Mr. Alder, now what kind of support is being provided on the ground for the safety, stability and protection of the children that continue to be killed, wounded and not to mention severely traumatised by all the violence?
Unicef support is really far-reaching. It's everything from medical supplies to hospitals and clinics. That might be first aid kits, it might be resuscitation, it might be obstetric kits, because women have to have babies in bunkers. It's emergency nutrition supply, it's water, be it bottles of water like I saw yesterday for evacuees coming out of the bunkers in Mariupol, or trying to repair water systems to bring back water to, many thousands of people. It's about counselling. It's about helping children get through the trauma. It's about education care. It's about online support for children. So it really does cover all avenues. It's frontline support across this country. Obviously that's dangerous. Obviously that's difficult, but that's what Unicef does.
And Ms. Park, how can South Korea help the children of Ukraine? How can we do our part?
Yeah, the important thing to help the children in Ukraine is to have awareness of the vulnerable population, including children who are suffering from the conflict. We are gravely concerned that the current escalation in the conflict will cause more misery for our children in Ukraine by depriving them of their rights to be educated, be healthy, and stay with their families. We have to keep our eyes on the situation and condemn attacks on civilians, especially on children. Also, it would be great to support humanitarian agencies like us, Save the Children, so we can continue to act quickly in times of crisis to get children and their families what they need.
And Mr. Elder, well, we unfortunately cannot say that the end to this war is in sight, but when the violence does end, what kind of efforts need to be made to protect families and children? What can we do to help?
Yes, indeed, it's so true. From day one, from the United Nations Secretary General, Unicef's Executive Director, it's been a perpetual call. Stop the war. Enough of the attacks. There must be a sustainable peace. But in the interim, while that's not happening, yes, UNICEF continues to work night and day across all corners to the edges of front lines to reach all those people impacted. And when peace does come, there'll be a huge reconstruction effort. We've seen so many attacks on schools, hundreds of schools, more than 100 health facilities and various healthcare areas damaged, destroyed. Water has continually been attacked. All those things that going to need to be rebuilt, whilst at the same time we seek to rebuild the lives of children, bring families home, help them start again, try and address the trauma of children to let them know that they once again can play, that a playground is safe, that a school is safe, that all those places that no longer are safe for them, can they have the trust again in this world that they won't be thrown back into a war. So there's an enormous amount of work to do right now, day to day, life-saving work for children that UNICEF does across the country. And then, of course, on this wonderful moment, whenever that is, when there is peace, there'll be a huge effort. I've not spoken to anyone outside of this country, when I spent days and days at train stations as people fled, haven't spoken to anyone who wanted to leave their country. They all want to come home. And that will be so important for those families to come back, to stop the brain drain out of Ukraine. That will happen with peace.
Well, I'm afraid we're going to have to wrap up the conversation here today. But of course, the conversation on how we can protect our children doesn't stop. That was James Elder, UNICEF Global Spokesperson, joining us from Ukraine, and Bang Young-hee, Senior Manager of Policy and Advocacy at Save the Children Korea. Thank you both so much for your time and your insights today.
Thank you.